Hello, you're watching TelecomTV on tour. We're in Dusseldorf in Germany at the SDN and OpenFlow World Congress. My name is Martyn Warwick and I'm talking with Prodip Sen, who is the Chief Technologist at the Networks Functional Virtualization Center, part NFV at HP. Prodip, great to see you.
Good to see you.
Last time we talked, you were talking with your Etsy hat on. We were talking in an Etsy context. Let's this time talk about things from an HP perspective and the industry perspective from there. You've been talking here about building the ecosystem for SDN and NFV. What does that mean and how far advanced is that ecosystem?
The ecosystem is evolving, but it has many different aspects. So if you look at the NFV architecture, the Etsy architecture, it has several major blocks around the infrastructure, around the management and orchestration, and around the network functions themselves. So in our mind, each of those blocks is a place where you can have a different ecosystem of partners. And so we're working with various partners in the different levels, at different levels. So we're working with technology partners in the infrastructure to make sure that the infrastructure we build is ready for the carrier networks. We're working with other partners on our management and orchestration to make sure we have the orchestration capabilities. And we ourselves are not necessarily building VNFs or network functions themselves, though we do have some and we're working on some of them. But in most cases, we are working with partners who are supplying that. These partners go from independent software providers to the current network equipment providers. It's a huge range. But the main thrust in building this ecosystem is that we have an open architecture. So we encourage others to partner with us, test with us to make sure that the overall system works, because we know that in this space, different carriers have different business objectives, different plans, and they are going to come to us with some constraints around what they want. They want specific things from specific parts of the ecosystem, and we're willing to work with others to create the solution. So that's what we're doing. So we have a technology partner program which has been announced, but it goes beyond technology partners. We are also partnering with various application providers, network function providers, and software providers to do this. So we have quite a comprehensive partner program. We have a set of labs which we have started up where we do some of this integration. So all of these pieces help to build the ecosystem. We're in proof of concepts all over the world with many different partners.
That was going to be, you've led me very nicely into my next question, which was going to be about exactly that. So POCs, proof of concepts, are now obviously very important. In this event here, there are 14 proofs of concept being demonstrated in reality. There are many more around the world. How many are you involved in HP?
So I don't remember the exact number right now, but we are involved in quite a large number of POCs, not just Etsy. So when we look at POCs, we count stuff which we're doing as Etsy POCs, but also we are directly engaged with other customers all around the world with POCs. Yeah. So I think we're the order, if we look at the total list of the order of, I may have the number not exactly right, but it's an order of 20 POCs around the world.
And do they run the gamut? I mean, do they cover everything that NFV might cover?
Yes, they cover different use cases and different domains. And our own participation in many of them are at different levels. We provide different pieces for the different POCs. We're not doing the same thing in every POC. In many of them, we do provide the base hardware, but in others, we're providing the management and orchestration, for example.
Yeah.
So different things in different.
One thing that's almost become the Cinderella as far as the NFV part of NFV and SDN is concerned is SDN. We know that they run in parallel with one another, almost touching at infinity, but we don't hear as much about SDN, even though this is an SDN event, at the moment, as we do about NFV. I know you're intrigued by this as I am. Why does SDN matter in NFV, and why is it seem to be sort of sidelined at the moment?
Yeah. So my participation in this whole journey started with SDN some 7 years ago or whatever. So that's where we thought we would be able to use SDN to transform the network and address the business challenges which are being faced in the carrier networks. And though the SDN concept is very, very appealing, interesting, and we could see the value it brings, when you try to apply it, it was very hard to build a business case which justified using it.
Yeah.
It was very hard. When NFV came along, to some of us, it was quite apparent what the business case was. NFV became the business case for SDN. Because when you want to deploy the NFV approach and the concept, you can do it in some limited ways and you get some of the benefits. But to truly get the benefits, you need to deploy it a little more spread out geographically. And once you do that, the use of SDN becomes a natural enabler, because if you don't have that, you cannot get all the full benefits. A simple, so yesterday I had a talk precisely about this topic. So I built the story around the use case that if you have a failure in a certain part of the network, and I use NFV to create new instances of the function I was running, but the endpoint which is trying to reach that service is now has to be redirected to a new place. And this is not the typical redirection which happens when you access over-the-top services, because your failure is your total cloud node has gone down. There's no way that you can be redirected unless you do something to the network. And that's where SDN comes in. If I had SDN which I could redirect the flow from the user to my new center, I could do it, and that SDN has to be tied into the NFV infrastructure. So this is missing currently. We don't quite have this story together as an industry. We've done bits and pieces of it. So, but it's an essential part of how you can realize the benefits of NFV, and we need to integrate it in.
So getting to grips with it and getting it settled, I'm going to put you on the spot, but how long do you think that's going to take?
I think it's not a technology issue.
No.
The technology is there, the bits and pieces are there. It's really thinking through how to operationalize this. What is the operational structure which allows you to do this? What's the overall architecture? When I say architecture, it's not a technology architecture. It's really at a higher level saying, how do I fit this into how I do things?
Yeah.
Right. So because one of the issues is SDN has come from the data center world, and much of the NFV stuff is coming from the data center world. The data center view of networking is very different from the network provider and carrier's view of networking. And this is what needs to be blended. How do I fit these two views together? How do I fit the processes together? And then we can solve this. So it's not a technology issue. And so timing is hard to judge because organizational and process things are harder to do. But from a solution perspective, we're working on how to put this together. I think we'll have approaches defined very soon. How it gets implemented is another story, because that needs some process and organizational change.
Thank you. Final question to you, Prodip, if I may. This is the third SDN and OpenFlow World Congress. Darmstadt a couple of years ago, 300 delegates, very enthusiastic but small, comparatively an unknown, practically unknown subject. Last year, Bad Homburg getting bigger, momentum growing. This year, they're turning people away at the door. 1,300 delegates here, proofs of concepts everywhere, an enormous and growing exhibition. It's really motoring this. Can you tell me, having watched this from the start, what do you think has happened in terms of the expectations that were raised in Darmstadt a couple of years ago to the reality of where we are today?
So I think at Darmstadt it was nascent, because that is where we announced the whole business of NFV, that is the industry effort. So that was the start. I think, and I would say that the growth which happened in the next year was largely due to NFV sort of starting to come into its own. Remember, this conference started as an SDN conference.
Absolutely.
And I guess this one, we're starting to see both becoming a little more mature and starting to see that there's an interplay between them. So it's not just me, there are several other people who have mentioned this notion of SDN and NFV need to interact. So I'm glad to see that there's an awareness now in the industry about this. So I think it's the maturing, the explosion is due to the maturing of the NFV, and I think the growth of expectation for NFV has been faster than that for SDN. SDN sort of, there was an initial high expectation period and then sort of dampening of that, but NFV has sort of given it a new wind, and I expect that this is what will continue. So as we get to, so unlike the situation at SDN where we had lots of lab setups and demonstrations, we didn't have this many proof of concepts in actual customer labs and actual carrier labs and around the world. That has happened very rapidly, and I think that shows the level of maturity, level of interest. So
we do live in interesting times.
we do, indeed.
Prodip Sen, thank you very much.